This cover, X-Men number 16, it's a variant cover by Russell Dauterman, who of course has done several covers like this with Jean, with Rogue, with Sue Storm. I cannot believe we have a Cyclops one. This is why we're still X-Men fans, Familia. This cover gets me so excited, and I love how all the Cyclops here form an X. This is so good. I love this cover so much. I just recorded my feels on the giant size X-Men crossover announcement. They weren't good feels, I'm sorry to say. So I wanted to sort of switch the mood and look at this cover and go through all of Cyclops's costumes and incarnations that are all rendered here. Now, I don't have any notes in front of me. I'm doing this based off of memory. I'm pretty sure I can name them all, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm okay being wrong, and certainly if I get something wrong or if I miss one of them, I think I've seen everyone here. There is like on this corner right here, and this is where if I was doing this live, it would be easier because maybe someone can like chime in. But like this nebulous right here, it's like a nebulous blue, yellow, red. I don't know what that is. I can't make it out, but we can certainly chat about it, whichever ones it could be. But let's go through all of these Cyclops incarnations, and I'll give a brief description on them, talk about their costumes, if we like it, if we don't. I am so excited. This cover has just put me in such a great mood. I want this cover and the Jean one like mounted somewhere, and the Emma one as well, mounted somewhere in my apartment because I love it so much. All right, here we go. All right, so let's start off with this one right here in the corner. Doesn't even have a head, but that is the first Hellfire Gala Cyclops costume. The first time the Hellfire Gala happened, the infamous scene where he goes to the bar to order a drink and Kevin Feige's there and he has a big old like red visor. This is that costume. I love it. It was such a good time. It was our first Hellfire Gala. We were all in lockdown and the X-Men were having a party and we were like, I wish we were there. Such a great costume. Really liked it. This one right here is the From the Ashes. It's the current costume he has, and it's in the Jed McKay run. This is his first post-Krakoan look. I personally like it. I know the Ryan Stegman art that came out initially with it. People were like, oh, he looks really young. Russell Dauterman's like, hold my beer. I'll make him look the age he's supposed to look. And now he certainly looks like a 30s, mid-30s individual in this costume, whereas before he kind of looked like, right below him, his teen Cyclops counterpart. But anyways, this costume, I like it. It's a costume he has currently in the books. Looks good. Russell Dauterman grabs every costume and elevates it. Again, not that the design was ever bad before, but just seeing it done by Russell Dauterman, so great. Okay, so this is original 5 Cyclops from the past who goes to his future, which is our present, and after about, I want to say like 17, 18 issues, Magic wields her sword and gives him modern costume. And so sort of all the O5 have a variation of this, like Jean has it in green, Bobby has more of an icy feel to it, Angel has it red, and Beast has it burnt orange. I hope I got those colors right. If I'm wrong, please don't come after me. But Jean for sure green, and Cyclops this one, and Bobby has a paler one. But yeah, this is his first official costume in his future, our present. So I guess within canon, if you look at the Marvel history timeline, this is his second official costume within the timeline. Obviously, from a publishing real-world schedule, that is not correct. But within the canon of the Marvel Universe, Cyclops has his O5, that orange and dark blue costume, and then this one. It's really great. He wears it during the all-new X-Men era. Bendis this is one of his costumes. I believe he gets... Does he get a third? I think he gets a third costume. He gets another costume right when when they're in X-Men Blue. And it's the same costume he wears in Phoenix Resurrection. Okay, so this is from Astonishing X-Men Xenogenesis. So this is way after Whedon, but during the Mark Waid era of Astonishing X-Men, but before Marjorie Liu would take over, where they were investigating mutant births in Africa, and Cyclops wears this outfit, and I'll never forget Emma like latches onto his arm when they're walking to their jet, and she's looking at Wolverine, and she's here like, well, if you get to sleep with the leader of a pack, you can design the costumes or do whatever you want. I'm forgetting exactly what she says, but that's the costume that he wore during Astonishing X-Men Xenogenesis. All right, let's make sure I got all of them. I'm a little overwhelmed here. Hellfire Gala, From the Ashes, his first all-new X-Men costume, and Xenogenesis. This one right here is Astonishing X-Men, debuted during the Whedon era. We have to astonish them. This was a hard pivot from when they were wearing the black leather costumes, and this is the first time they come back after a couple years wearing traditional superhero costumes. I like this costume quite a bit. I think it looks really good. In fact, all the costumes we have seen right now, I like very much. I think this is... Dauterman picked some really fine costumes here. It's going to be hard to be like, oh, I don't like this one or not. But this is the Astonishing era costume. He would wear it for a very long time. There will be variations of it, but it would still maintain that, like, the blue with the skull cap, sort of... It will keep somewhat of this vibe. So this is the original 5 Cyclops outfit. Now, this looks more like the Bendis era 05 coming to the present interpretation, right? That's such a nuanced thing to say. It doesn't remind me so much of the original Stan Lee era 05 back in the 60s, but it does look like the all-new X-Men. It doesn't matter. It's the same costume, same character. He's younger here, so he's a teenager, so he's not as buff as his older counterpart, but this is why he's called Slim. Ultimate X-Men Cyclops. Does he have facial hair? He has some facial hair there. Ultimate Cyclops, very different. I don't know if it's very different from our main 616 Cyclops, but certainly a different take. And for those of you who don't know, the Ultimate X-Men were written at a time that Marvel wanted to attract new readers, but they didn't want readers to feel weighed down by the continuity of the 616 issues. So that's why they introduced the Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Spider-Man, the Ultimate imprint, so it could be an access point for new readers. This is the time during the movies, X-Men Evolution, stuff like that. So this was Marvel's attempt at getting new readers. I'm always going to remember Cyclops going to fight Magneto, and he was in his whitey tighties. All right, so I'm going to have a lot of things to say here about Phoenix 5 Cyclops. But right there in the corner, that's the X-Men Blue final costume that the 05 Cyclops wears while he's in the present. So the X-Men Blue, Phoenix Resurrection, you don't see his face there, but that's him, and that's his costume right there. Right here, Phoenix 5 Cyclops. The Phoenix is coming for Hope Summers. Iron Man intervenes, splinters the Phoenix, and it goes into Scott Summers. You know, I don't think AVX is particularly well written. I don't think AVX is it's very lopsided. It's very inconsistent with its narrative. The art looks great, don't get me wrong, but one of the things I think they did well, at least in my opinion, was that Cyclops was holding out for the Phoenix. He believed the Phoenix was coming to repower the mutant race, and finally it arrives, the Avengers mess it up, and the Phoenix now enters him. And so all of a sudden he's tasked with the responsibility of repowering the mutants. It is never addressed as to why the Phoenix 5 don't recreate the X gene, right? It is a large plot hole. They just immediately start taking care of world hunger and the environment on Earth, but they never talk about repopulating the mutant race. It's fine. That you would think that would be Cyclops' number one priority. However, Cyclops having the Phoenix, betraying Emma and taking the full Phoenix, and then him himself being Dark Phoenix and seeing an apparition of Jean, and that's how he lets it go. I think good story for Cyclops. A very fine story for Cyclops. Okay, this is Age of Apocalypse Cyclops. It is a very different take on Cyclops. I would say in the end, he's kind of status quo. He is leading the humans to freedom with Jean right before the bombs. The Human Council burns, the world. but he is very much Sinister's favorite son here. There's a lot of competition with Havoc. You know, it's a nature versus nurture kind of argument that they try to pose during the Age of Apocalypse. He's got the long Pantene Provine hair. He's missing an eye because he fought with Wolverine, and Wolverine took the eye out. So it's a fun interpretation of him. I love Age of Apocalypse so much. This is obviously his iconic skull cap costume. Technically in a publishing, well, I guess maybe in the publishing perspective, the Eric the Red costume would be his official team costume that he wears consistently. How about that? During the 70s, Dark Phoenix saga, 80s, this costume, right before he joins X Factor, this would sort of be his costume with the skull cap. Gene designed it for him, and gave costumes to the rest of the '05. Iconic, wonderful costume. I love it very much. I love all these. Familia, I can't say a bad thing about any of them. If I had to pick one I didn't like out of this bunch that we've discussed so far, it would probably be the Hellfire Gala year one. Curious about you guys. You tell me what you think. Which are the ones you don't like here? Say them in the comments. Okay, let's make sure we got everyone. So here's new X-Men to kick off to the Morrison era. Love that jacket. He's still wearing that jacket in Jed McKay's X-Men. And that jacket appears sporadically throughout the last 25 years. You'll see jackets, these jackets worn by Sunspot or Cyclops. The jackets are still present. They're cool looking jackets. They look great. So happy to see it. Cyclops was going through it during this era. He had just been possessed by Insabanor, aka Apocalypse. So he was questioning himself as a leader. His marriage was falling apart, and this was sort of New X-Men was sort of the kickoff for that. The Jim Lee era Cyclops. I mean, there it is. It's iconic. That's it. I'm sorry to boil down my thoughts to just one pop culture word, iconic, but this is, I think, when most people who are not diehard X-Men fans, most people who just grew up in the 90s and they knew about the X-Men, they're going to picture Cyclops like this. It's a great costume. Debuted in Jim Lee's X-Men, Chris Claremont, Jim Lee's X-Men #1. So right behind him, we have two X Factor costumes, right? So let's start with this one right here. I don't know how I would describe it. This is the X Factor costume that they wear when they're not being superheroes, when they're sort of investigating a crime scene or they're being more media public facing. It's just all of the '05 when they returned for X Factor following Jean's resurrection after the Dark Phoenix saga. They all sort of wear the civilian-ish, they're not civilian, but you know what I'm trying to say, that non-superhero uniforms that they wear out in public. All right, and then behind him, okay, hang on. Then behind him right here, that's his first X Factor costume, which we're getting the Marvel Legends based off of. So this is Cyclops, fresh off the heels of abandoning Madeline Pryor and Baby Cable. I know, listen, a lot of people cite that moment in Cyclops' history as sort of him being the worst. I will never excuse his actions for abandoning Maddie and Baby Cable. However, I think context is always important. I have said this ad nauseum. We have to remember that Cyclops saw his entire family die in a plane crash. He was separated from his brother in the foster care system. And when he was at an orphanage, Mr. Sinister was stalking him. And when he became an adult, he created a clone of his dead lover with the purpose of just breeding. I mean, that was horrible. And then Jean is discovered to be alive, and I mean, Cyclops was going through it emotionally. So not perfect, but also a victim of Sinister's manipulation. So that's where he's at with this costume. He had moved to Alaska after losing leadership of the X-Men to Storm. Cyclops was, again, he was having, I'm not going to say midlife crisis, but, the original intent of that was that Cyclops was supposed to live happily ever after, according to Chris Claremont, and that he's a reserved member of the X-Men and will come out for the big battles. But Madeline originally was supposed to be that 1 in a million chance that Cyclops had in finding happiness. It was Jean was dead, but he found someone who looked like her. They were soulmates, and now he could live happily ever after, have a kid or two, that be a family man, and come out when he could. And that's why we had Kitty come. So if you notice, Jean dies at the end of Dark Phoenix Saga, but here's a new member coming in, which is Kitty, and the idea was that the X-Men, sort of their generations of X-Men. Again, that's not how it panned out, but that was the intent behind it. X-Men Revolution Cyclops. I don't understand the practicality of this costume. This, when I think of his eyes, I'm like, he'd have to be almost like crossing his eyes just to shoot out the lasers. X-Men Revolution, post-AVX. His powers were on the fritz during this era, so maybe that's why this costume works. Maybe that's the utility for it. I'd have to go back and reread all those issues. I don't remember them saying something about it. He just showed up wearing that costume. It was more of a statement against the Avengers and everything that sort of happened on AVX. He was on the run. He was underground. They were in a Weapon X facility as their base. The O5 were back. I love this costume. This is a great costume. One of my favorite costumes. One of my favorite legends, too. Okay. The back right there. That is Hellfire Gala Year 3 Cyclops. Right there. Very blurry. That's what he wore at the Hellfire Gala for like a split second. He immediately, there was something going on at Treehouse, his treehouse in, it's Treehouse. I'm confused because I called this our place here in Miami Treehouse. But he was sort of getting an alert that someone had infiltrated the Treehouse. It was the new Captain Krakoa. That's the costume he wears for a second before changing into his Jim Lee Cyclops outfit, his Jim Lee costume. You're like, yes, and we know it's Cyclops, Jim Lee Cyclops. And there is Jim Lee Cyclops again with a jacket this time. Russell Dauterman did like a 90s X-Men cover. So he did for Giant Size X-Men, I believe #1, where they discover Storm laying on the shores of Krakoa. There's a shot of Wolverine, Emma, Jean, Cyclops, and Storm. He would do in their modern Krakoa outfits. He would do a variant of them in the 90s, and in it he would do a Cyclops with the jacket, but more with that woolish collar. So right there, and of course that's a homage to his leather jacket during the Jim Lee era. Oh, Age of X, the Mike Carey Age of X, not to be confused with Age of X-Man. Age of X by Mike Carey, where Utopia was transformed and you had Force Warriors and Rachel Summers, who was coming back from space trying to deliver a distress call. This is the costume that Cyclops wore in that event. Him and Frenzy were a couple during that time. I like that costume quite a bit. Love it very, very much. Okay, let's make sure we have everything so far. Okay, I think we've gotten everyone. This is X Factor towards the end when he has to give up Cable to the Ascani. This is his last X Factor costume before he would rejoin the X-Men and we get Jim Lee X-Men. And this is, of course, his Krakoan era costume. Again, it's like a variation of his Astonishing X-Men costume. I like it very much. I like the blue trim on it, the light blue trim on it. No notes. This is now when I think of X Factor, it could be just the time I became aware of the comics, the trading cards I had, the 5-inch Toy Biz figure, which was originally this one. This is what I think about with X Factor Cyclops. I had the helmet too when I was a kid. I didn't know I should have held on to it because now I can't find it anywhere, but it was the X Factor variant. I loved it so much, but this is it's his second costume within X Factor. This is how I think of Cyclops during that era. There's a Mafex, there's a Marvel Legends on it, Toy Biz figure, and the helmet, which was a variant. I believe there was two Do not quote me on this. I believe there were two helmets back in like the late 80s, early 90s, where it was like the traditional blue skull cap and then the X Factor skull cap, and you can just put it on. I loved it so much. Okay, that is his second Astonishing X-Men costume. He would wear it during the Utopian era. When I think of this costume, I think of the X-Men Exodus issue where they establish I was going to say Krakoa, Utopia, where they establish Utopia off of the coast of San Francisco. But this is definitely post Astonishing X-Men Whedon. This is when Mark Waid sort of took over the comic. This is the little flourishes that they gave to the Astonishing era costume. Okay, again, I don't know what this is here. There's clearly something here. I can't make that. I'm sorry. Worst X-Men journalist ever, right? I don't know what that is. It may be obvious to someone else, not obvious to me. But what is obvious to me is this costume, which I love so much. Eve of Destruction, Cyclops, where he's wearing this black, more casual outfit. He has a motorcycle. His hair's a little shaggy. He's coming off of being possessed by Ensabanor, a.k.a. Apocalypse, right before New X-Men. He met up with his dad, Corsair. Is it Uncanny X-Men 391? I'm okay to be... I cannot do issue numbers. They jumble up in my head, but this is where he meets up with Corsair. They have like a father-son bonding moment, and then we get Eve of Destruction. This is this costume is around for like five issues. Okay. Did we get everyone? I think we got everyone, Familia. I think so. If I missed one, I am sorry. I'm looking really quickly here. I think we got all of them. Familia, which is your favorite? Drop them in the comments below. Let me know. Are you a fan of Cyclops? Which era of Cyclops do you like? Which incarnation of Cyclops do you like? Which costume do you not like? Give your feels below, and we'll catch you later.